Before we start, please don't forget to like and subscribe. The rain had soaked through the shoulders of my coat by the time I reached the apartment door. I was still shaking off the cold when I stepped inside, only to freeze mid-step. She was there, on my couch. "Did you miss me, honey?" Vanessa's voice poured out like syrup, familiar, dangerous, sweet in that way that used to twist me up inside. She had one leg crossed over the other, draped in my wife's throw blanket like she'd just paused a Netflix episode, not trespassed into my life. I didn't blink. "Get lost," I said sharply, slamming the door behind me. "I'm waiting for my wife." Vanessa's smile didn't flinch. "Oh, I saw the photo. Very domestic. Is she the soft type or the sharp one?" "You don't get to ask questions," I snapped. "You walked out. No goodbye, no note, just empty drawers and a canceled phone plan. You ghosted me like a coward." She uncrossed her legs and stood slowly, like this was her stage. "Well, looks like you've done all right without me," she murmured, running her fingers along the back of the couch, her eyes catching on the framed wedding photo on the shelf. "New wife. Sleek furniture. Still obsessed with gray tones, I see." "Vanessa, how did you even get in here?" My voice dropped an octave, low and seething. "This is breaking and entering." "I still had a key," she said, waving it in the air. "Surprised you didn't change the locks." "Why would I?" I said through clenched teeth. "You made it clear you were never coming back. And now what? This is just some grand re-entrance. You think you can just slither back in like nothing happened?" She laughed, light, airy, and cruel. "Slither? Wow, that's poetic, Eric. I forgot how dramatic you get when you're cornered." "I'm not cornered," I said, walking toward her. "I'm disgusted." Her gaze narrowed, but her voice stayed syrupy. "So no warm welcome, no how have you been? No one's ever missed me before, you know. Not like you did." I looked her dead in the eye. "You were never the part of my life worth missing." The rain tapped steadily against the windows behind her, as if adding its own percussion to our collision. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Me, boiling under the surface. Her, calculating, letting her presence seep into the room like smoke. "You look tired," she said at last, cocking her head. "Marriage not as easy the second time around." I didn't take the bait. "Leave now, or I'll call the cops." "I'm not afraid of cops," she said, slipping her heels back on with practiced grace. "But I'll go. For now." She started toward the door, then paused. "Tell your wife I said hello." The door clicked shut behind her, and the air she left behind felt heavier than before. I stood there for a few seconds, just breathing, letting the adrenaline sink back into my skin. That was Vanessa, the woman who vanished a year ago after draining our joint account and ghosting every obligation she'd ever made. No explanations, no closure, just silence. Until now, for the past 12 months, I'd built something solid, clean lines, calm evenings, a life I could recognize when I looked in the mirror. I had Lena now, my wife, my peace. Vanessa's sudden reappearance wasn't just a crack in the foundation. It was a wrecking ball aimed right at everything I'd rebuilt. And yet somehow, I had a feeling this was only the beginning. It hadn't been more than 5 minutes since Vanessa slinked out the door, but the storm she dragged in still lingered like perfume and poison mixed in the air. The lock clicked again. This time, it was Lena. "Hey, babe," she called softly as she shut the door behind her, shaking off the rain from her umbrella. "Why is it so quiet in here?" I didn't answer at first. Just stood there, one hand braced on the edge of the console table, heart still kicking like I'd run a marathon. Her heels tapped closer, and then she saw my face. Her smile faded instantly. "Eric, what happened?" I turned toward her. My voice came out flatter than I expected. Vanessa was here. Silence. Lena blinked, stunned. "I'm sorry, what?" She was here, sitting on that couch, like she never left. Lena's eyes darted past me to the throw blanket still ruffled on the cushion. She dropped her purse. She got in. I nodded. Used an old key. I didn't even know she had one still. "And what did she say?" Lena asked, quieter now. "Why now?" I laughed, but there was nothing funny about it. She said, "Did you miss me, honey?" Like it was some sitcom reunion. Like she didn't abandon everything and disappear. Lena crossed her arms and leaned against the counter, watching me carefully. "And how did that make you feel?" It was a simple question, but I hated that she asked it. Frustrated, I snapped. Confused. Angry, but not emotional, if that's what you're fishing for. I don't feel anything for her, Lena. Not anymore. Lena said nothing, just nodded, slow and steady, waiting. I let out a breath. She left, ghosted me, took her stuff, emptied the joint savings, and vanished like some magician's finale. And now she's back like nothing happened. Do you think it's about money? Lena asked gently. I don't know. I muttered, rubbing the back of my neck. Maybe, but there were rumors back then. People said she ran off with someone. A guy from her old firm, I think. I never confirmed it, but I always suspected. Lena looked down, then walked over and reached for my hand. I trust you, she said. I just need to hear you say you're not shaken. I'm not, I replied. She doesn't matter to me, but I'll be damned if I let her waltz back in and pretend she still belongs here. We stood like that for a while. Her fingers curled around mine, grounding me. That night, I barely slept. Every sound outside the window felt like footsteps. My thoughts spun in tight, relentless circles. Vanessa's smirk, the way she glanced at our wedding photo like it was a trophy she was owed. By morning, I was already on the phone with a locksmith. I want every lock replaced, I said firmly. Front, back, and the mailbox too. Yes, sir, the voice on the line replied. We'll be there in an hour. Lena came into the kitchen, wrapped in her robe, still half asleep. You really calling someone this early? I'm not taking chances, I said. If she thinks she can come and go, she's wrong. Lena nodded, watching me from behind her mug. Her tone was steady, but her eyes gave her away. This feels like the beginning of something, she said quietly. Doesn't it? I met her gaze. It won't be, I told her. I won't let it. The doorbell rang. Time to change the locks. The third morning after the locksmith came, I pulled open the mailbox expecting junk, credit card offers, utility bills, maybe a flyer for a new pizza place. Instead, I found a manila envelope. Thick, official, my name printed across the front in heavy black ink. I knew that weight before I even opened it. My heart was already hammering as I tore it open. And there it was. Cook County Circuit Court. Summons to appear. Petition filed by one Vanessa K. Holloway. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, Chicago wind slicing through my coat like it wanted in on the drama. My fingers went numb, not from the cold, but from rage. 3 days. That's all it took for her to turn a trespass into a legal ambush. By the time I got back upstairs, I didn't even take off my shoes. I went straight to the living room, slammed the envelope on the coffee table, and grabbed my phone. She answered on the second ring. Well, came her voice, smooth as velvet. That was fast. You filed a claim? I barked. You came back just to start a legal war? I came back, she said slowly, to claim what's mine. I laughed, sharp, disbelieving. You mean the life you threw away? The home you disappeared from without a word? The bank account you drained? That's what you're after now? Property's still joint in the eyes of the law, she replied coolly. No matter how many new curtains you put up. You weren't even there for the divorce hearing. I shot back. You ignored the court. I got the settlement legally. You had no objections. You had your chance, Vanessa. Her voice dipped, almost teasing. Maybe I changed my mind. No, I hissed. What you did was run out of options. You hit rock bottom, and now you're circling back, looking for a lifeline. She didn't deny it, just chuckled, low and smug. You always were dramatic, she said. I'm not the villain here, Eric. I just want what I'm entitled to, and I've got time now. So, I figured, let the judge decide. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. You think a judge is going to give you anything? You walked. No contact. No forwarding address. No claims. You don't own any of this. Not a single fork in the drawer. We'll see, she said lightly. And then she hung up. Just like that. I stood there staring at my own reflection in the black screen of my phone. My hands were shaking. My breath felt shallow. It wasn't just about the money, or the apartment, or the past. It was the feeling I'd buried for a year trying to build something new. That creeping chaos she carried like perfume. The unpredictability. The way she could smile while dismantling everything in her path. That's what was back now. I sat down slowly, the court papers still spread open in front of me like a threat dressed in legalese. Lena wasn't home. I almost didn't want to tell her, but I knew I would have to, because this wasn't over. It was just the start. The courtroom was quiet, too quiet. That clinical kind of silence where every cough, every creak of a chair sounded like a cannon. Wood-paneled walls, polished floors, the smell of old paper and fresh nerves. I sat beside my attorney, Mark Jensen, a gray-haired hawk with glasses that never quite stayed on the bridge of his nose. Lena was in the gallery behind me, her presence calm but charged. She didn't speak. Didn't need to. Just being there was enough. Vanessa sat across the aisle. Red lipstick. Black dress. Hair curled like she was walking into a job interview instead of a reckoning. She kept her arms crossed, chin up, gaze dancing around like she owned the room. Like this was going to be a performance. It was, but not the one she expected. Judge Hampton entered, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, her robe crisp and expression sharper than a scalpel. "Let's begin," she said, flipping through the folder the clerk had handed her. Mark rose. "Your Honor, my client, Eric Holloway, is responding to a property claim filed by Vanessa K. Holloway, his former spouse." She looked up briefly. "Former spouse as of last year, correct?" "Yes, Your Honor. Divorce finalized 11 months ago. Default judgment due to non-response from Mrs. Holloway." Vanessa stood, too fast. "Excuse me, I wasn't even in the country when those papers were filed." Judge Hampton didn't blink. "Mrs. Holloway, did you update your legal address at any point?" "No. But were you unreachable by mail or email during the proceedings?" Well, I didn't check. But that doesn't mean." She raised one hand like a stop sign. "Then we'll proceed." Vanessa slowly lowered herself back into her chair, but the tightness in her jaw gave her away. The cracks were showing. Mark continued. "As per Illinois law, given Mrs. Holloway's failure to appear and her absence of legal challenge during the proceedings, all shared marital assets were lawfully awarded to my client. This includes the condominium in River North, the joint account, now closed, and all furnishings within the residence." Judge Hampton skimmed through the documents again, tapping the papers with a practiced rhythm. "I see no indication that Mrs. Holloway submitted any formal objection, appeal, or filing to contest these terms at the time." Vanessa shot to her feet again. "I didn't know I needed to. I thought it would all be there when I came back." The courtroom stirred. A few spectators exchanged glances. I sat still, calm, but inside, the tension was wound tight. The judge's tone remained flat. "Mrs. Holloway, legal systems don't function on assumption. They function on action. You failed to act." "But he locked me out," she said louder, pointing at me now. "He changed the locks and moved on like I was a ghost." "You abandoned the residence," Mark cut in, standing again. "You were gone for over 6 months without contact. That is considered desertion under the law." The court moved forward. "Rightfully. I left because I needed space." Vanessa's voice cracked. "I thought we could fix things." "No communication. No forwarding address," the judge said, unmoved. "No case." Silence. Then, finally, the gavel came down. "This court finds no legal basis to reopen the finalized divorce judgment. All claims are dismissed." Vanessa's breath caught audibly. "What? You're not even going to consider?" "Ma'am." The bailiff approached her quietly. "Time to go." She turned, frantic now. "No, wait. I didn't know." "Eric, please." Her voice trembled as the guards took her gently by each arm. Our eyes met. It was a look I hadn't seen since the beginning, when she still knew how to be vulnerable, when she still had something left to lose. But that version of her was long gone. And so was my sympathy. She didn't resist, just stumbled once as they led her away. And as the doors closed behind her, the silence returned. Not tense, not bitter, just cold and final. The rain had returned, softer this time, a steady whisper across the pavement. I just poured myself a bourbon, the first quiet sip after a long day, when the doorbell rang. Once, then again. I didn't need to check the peephole. Some things you feel before you see. I opened the door slowly. Vanessa stood there, drenched, trembling, mascara trailing down her cheeks. Her black coat clung to her like a second skin, rainwater dripping from her cuffs to the mat below. "I didn't know where else to go," she whispered. Her voice cracked like it hadn't been used all day. I didn't say a word. She took a shaky breath and stepped closer. "Please, Eric. Just a few minutes to talk. Just somewhere dry." Behind me, Lena's footsteps paused. I didn't turn, but I knew exactly where she was, just beyond the archway, watching silently from the hallway. Wrapped in her robe, her arms crossed tightly, heart unreadable in her stillness. Vanessa's eyes flicked toward the shadows. She knew Lena was there. Of course she did. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "For all of it. I messed up. I know I did." Her voice broke again. I didn't think it would all come crashing down like this. You didn't think? I echoed, coldly. You vanished for a year, and then you came back demanding pieces of a life you left in ruins. She stepped closer, fingers knotted together. I'm broke, Eric. I have nothing. My bank account's frozen, I'm behind on rent, my car got towed this morning. I thought maybe you could help. She was shaking. From the cold. From shame. From the weight of consequences she never believed would reach her. I looked at her hands. Open, pleading, the same hands that once wore my ring. You think I owe you something? I asked quietly. No, she said quickly. I don't know. Maybe kindness. Maybe just 5 minutes not out in the rain. From the hallway, Lena didn't move. Didn't speak. But her silence pressed against me like gravity. Vanessa's lips trembled. Eric, I'm not asking for forever. I'm asking for tonight. Just the couch. Just until I can figure out where to go. I looked her dead in the eye. You made your choices, I said, voice steady. Leave. Her mouth parted, stunned. Like she thought the courtroom was a performance. But this moment? This was where the curtain would rise again, and she'd still have a role. She didn't. I stepped back, hand firm on the door. Don't come here again. Eric. I shut the door before she could finish. For a long time, I just stood there, hand on the knob, listening to the soft patter of rain on the other side. No movement. No more knocking. She was gone. Lena stepped into the room a moment later. She didn't speak, just reached over, took the untouched glass from my hand, and set it on the table. The silence between us wasn't angry or cold. It was something else. Something waiting. That night, the city buzzed quietly outside our window. Just enough hum to remind you that life went on whether your chest felt light or heavy. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling fan, listening to the way Lena's breathing shifted beside me. Neither of us had said much since I closed the door on Vanessa. I thought maybe that silence would be enough. But of course it wasn't. Lena turned toward me in the dark. Her voice was soft, almost careful. You know she's not okay. I didn't answer. She wasn't faking that, she added after a pause. She's unraveling. She chose that, I said flatly, keeping my eyes on the fan. She walked out. She burned bridges and never looked back. Now she wants someone to carry her over the ashes. Lena didn't argue. Instead, she reached over and gently placed her hand on mine. Not pushing, just resting there. Warm. Intentional. Life doesn't always punish people when they deserve it, she murmured. Sometimes they punish themselves without realizing it, until it's too late. I finally turned my head, meeting her gaze in the faint glow from the streetlight outside. You think I should help her? I think, Lena said slowly, that being better than her doesn't mean being untouched by her. It means choosing who you are, even when you're angry, even when she doesn't deserve it. My jaw tensed. I didn't like the thought of giving Vanessa anything, especially after everything she'd tried to take. But Lena's hand never moved. She looked at you like you were the last safe place she had left, she said. You don't have to open the door again. Just don't close your heart. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I exhaled, low, slow, and exhausted. She wouldn't have done this for me, I said. I know, Lena whispered. But that's the difference. That was Lena, always seeing the line between justice and compassion clearer than I could. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table before the sun had even risen. The coffee was still brewing when I pulled out the checkbook from the drawer. My hands hesitated for a second, hovering over the page. Then I started writing. 10,000. No note. No explanation. Just a name on the line, Vanessa K. Holloway. I sealed it in an envelope and placed it in the building's mail drop slot, the one I knew she checked sometimes, even when she pretended not to. I didn't tell Lena right away. Didn't need to. She saw it in my face when I came back upstairs. Thank you, she said simply, leaning into my side as I wrapped an arm around her. I didn't answer, but for the first time in weeks, I felt like something inside me had finally settled. Maybe this wasn't about Vanessa at all anymore. Maybe it never really was. The restaurant had soft jazz playing overhead, candles flickering gently at every table, and the rich smell of garlic and herbs drifting from the open kitchen. Lena laughed quietly as she twirled her fork through her linguine. Okay, but I'm serious, she said, leaning in, eyes dancing. Your idea of a vacation is hiking in the snow. That's not relaxing. That's training for mountain rescue. I grinned and raised my glass. It builds character. Oh, it builds something, all right. She tapped her wine glass against mine. Probably a stress fracture. It felt good, natural. The low light, the warmth between us. For the first time in weeks, we weren't just recovering. We were living again. I reached across the table and laced my fingers with hers. Next trip's your call. No backpacks. No cliffs. She smirked. I want that in writing. But before I could reply, we both heard it. Heels slamming against the marble floor, fast and loud. Heads turned. And then I saw her. Vanessa. Her dress clung to her like it hadn't been washed in days. Hair wild. Eyes red. Not from makeup, but from the kind of crying that leaves you dry. She stormed between the tables, clumsily brushing past a server who gasped, barely catching her tray. Then, bang. She slammed a half-empty wine bottle onto our table. The silverware clattered. The room went dead quiet. Really, Eric? She spat, voice shaking with rage. This is who you replaced me with. Lena sat up slowly, spine straight, but didn't say a word. Look at her. Vanessa sneered, gesturing violently. Does she even know the real you? Or is she just living in the little fantasy world you built out of guilt and glassware? Vanessa, I said, my voice already low with warning. Leave. Now. But she didn't move. $10,000? She shrieked. You think that makes us even? That I should just take your charity like I'm some pathetic? Then she grabbed the bottle and, in one swift motion, flung the wine across the table. It hit Lena square in the chest. Red. All over her blouse. Down her arms. Into her lap. Gasps echoed across the restaurant. A waiter dropped a plate behind us. I was on my feet before I realized I'd moved. Are you insane? I barked, stepping between them. Is this how you say thank you? Vanessa looked stunned, like she hadn't expected me to shout, like she still thought I'd defend her. Lena slowly stood, her hands shaking as she reached for a napkin, dabbing at her blouse in silence. You can't just walk in here, and I stopped myself. My fists were clenched. My pulse thundered in my ears. Vanessa stepped back, her voice trembling now. I didn't mean to. Eric, you don't understand what it feels like to be completely discarded. You discarded yourself, I snapped. You abandoned everything. And now you're throwing tantrums because the consequences showed up. I turned to Lena. We're leaving. She didn't argue. I grabbed her coat from the chair and guided her out, my hand on her back. The maitre d' scrambled to follow, apologizing under his breath as whispers rippled through the room. Outside, the air was sharp and cold. We stopped on the sidewalk under a flickering street lamp. Lena exhaled, still wiping at her shirt with the same napkin, her movements slow and deliberate. Are you okay? I asked gently. She nodded. I think she's lost. I shook my head, jaw tight. She's not lost. She's reckless. There's a difference. Lena looked at me, really looked. What are you going to do now? I didn't hesitate. I'm done playing saint. And I meant every word. Vanessa had turned forgiveness into a weapon. But this wasn't grace anymore. This was survival. She'd thrown her last glass of wine at my life. Now it was time to lock the door for good. Before we move on, tap like if this is landing for you. The next morning, the city was waking up slow, gray skies, lazy traffic, a layer of frost still clinging to windshields like the night didn't want to let go. But I was already 20 stories up in a glass-walled office, sitting across from the only person who could help me make it stop for good. Mark Jensen, my attorney, set his coffee down and leaned back, adjusting his wire frames. He looked over the incident report I'd written out while everything was still fresh. Every word felt heavier when I saw it printed in black and white. She showed up at a restaurant, I told him. Public place. Caused a scene. Threw wine on Lena. Mark nodded slowly. Anyone else witness it? Half the restaurant. I'm pretty sure someone was filming. Good, he said plainly. That'll help. I raised an eyebrow. You're sure we can actually file for a restraining order? I mean, she didn't throw fists, but it was more than just a bad night. Mark opened a folder and pulled out the court transcript from our last hearing. He tapped the top of it with his pen. Let's recap. First, she trespasses. Then, she files a claim she knows is baseless. Gets dismissed. Comes back begging for help, which you give, he paused, generously by the way. I said nothing. And then she escalates again. Publicly. Aggressively. That's a pattern of harassment, Eric. It's textbook. I leaned back in the chair, hands folded. She's unraveling. That much is obvious. Mark looked at me squarely. Which is exactly why you need protection now. You gave her an inch. She tried to swallow the whole street. I ran a hand down my face. And if she violates the order? Then she's facing criminal charges, he said without hesitation. But let's hope it doesn't get that far. By the end of the hour, the paperwork was filed. Mark's team moved fast. The request was submitted with affidavits, evidence, and supporting details from the court and restaurant. Lena offered to write a statement too. Once it's in her hands, Mark said, she legally can't call you, text you, show up at your residence, job, or Lena's. She violates it. She's done. I left his office lighter, but not exactly relieved. The idea that it had come to this sat like a stone in my chest. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just tired. 3 days passed. Lena and I kept to ourselves. Quiet dinners, long walks, a few shared laughs that felt like little threads pulling us back to normal. But I could see her glance toward the windows more often. I caught her checking the door lock twice some nights. We were both waiting for the next knock. Then the call came. Mark's voice was calm. She's been served. I looked out the window of my office, downtown bustling far below. How did she take it? Mark exhaled through the phone. Didn't say much. Just nodded. Took the envelope and walked away. That's it. For now. That night, Lena met me at the door with 2 mugs of tea. No wine. No tension. She handed me one, her fingers brushing mine. It's done. I nodded. It's done. She leaned into my chest and exhaled against me like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. For the first time in a long while, our home felt like it belonged to us again. And outside, Chicago moved on. No screams, no storms, no more uninvited guests. Just peace. I came home late that night, rain misting the sidewalks, the city humming in that strange, hushed way it does when people are already winding down. Lena had already gone to bed. The lights in the apartment were dim, dinner waiting in the fridge, a little note stuck to the counter in her handwriting. Made your favorite. Warm it up, love you. I smiled faintly, folded the note, and slid it into my wallet. I was halfway through unbuttoning my collar when a knock hit the door. One knock, then another. Faster, louder. I froze. A part of me already knew. I walked to the peephole, and my breath caught in my throat. Vanessa, soaked to the skin, hair limp and wild, mascara streaked in tired trails down her face. Her eyes were hollow, wide and red and trembling. She looked like a ghost of the woman I once knew. I opened the door, but only halfway. Left the chain latched. You shouldn't be here, I said flatly. Her voice cracked. Eric, please. Please. I didn't know where else to go. You've been served. You read the order. I know, she whispered, glancing over her shoulder. Just listen to me, please. Just for a second. I'm not here to fight. I'm not here to ruin anything, I swear. Then leave, I said, beginning to close the door. She reached forward and slapped her palm against it. Don't. Eric, don't shut me out, not like this. I'm not okay. Her hands shook violently. Her whole body did, like she hadn't slept in days. I'm scared, she whispered, eyes darting toward the hallway. I don't know what's happening to me. I didn't speak. I didn't move. My hand stayed tight on the door, and slowly, without a word, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Vanessa saw it, and panic lit in her eyes like fire. No, no, Eric, wait. She pressed harder against the door. Please don't call them. I'm not dangerous. I'm not. I'm just lost. I didn't come to yell. I just wanted to see you. Please, just talk to me. I dialed anyway. 911. What's your emergency? I spoke calmly, clearly. This is Eric Holloway. A woman under a current restraining order is at my residence, refusing to leave. I need officers dispatched immediately. Vanessa's breath came in short, choppy gasps now. You don't mean this. I know you don't. You're not that kind of man. I didn't respond. Just looked at her through the small crack in the door. Her face broke. She dropped to her knees. Eric, please. Please. I have nothing left. I don't want to go to jail. Just let me sit. Just talk to me. 10 minutes. I'm begging you. Still silent, I stepped back from the door and waited near the hallway. I didn't shut it. Didn't touch her. I just waited. And 15 minutes later, the elevator dinged. 2 officers stepped out. Vanessa didn't run. She didn't shout. She just broke. When they gently took her arms and pulled her up, she sobbed so hard she couldn't speak. Her knees buckled. and one of them had to hold her up as they cuffed her hands behind her back. "Sir," one officer nodded toward me. "Do you want to give a statement tonight?" I shook my head. "You've got it in the file." Vanessa turned her head as they walked her toward the elevator. Her voice came out jagged and low. "Eric, please, don't let it end like this." I didn't answer, didn't move, just watched as the doors slid shut behind her. The apartment was still. I walked back into the living room, closed the door, and locked it. Then I leaned against the wall and exhaled. Not in relief, not in triumph, just in something like grief. Not for her, but for everything she'd turned herself into, and the peace I refused to lose again. By the time I walked back into the apartment, the storm had passed. Not outside, there was no storm out there. Just a soft, steady drizzle against the windows. But inside, the real weather had changed. Lena was in the kitchen, barefoot, stirring something on the stove. Jazz played low from her phone, and the warm smell of roasted garlic and something buttery filled the space like comfort itself. She glanced over her shoulder when she heard the door click shut. "You okay?" I nodded, dropping my keys into the bowl by the door. "She's gone." Lena turned down the stove and faced me fully. "How bad?" She cried. She begged. Officers came. She didn't resist, but I sighed, running a hand down my face. It was the final act of something that should have ended a long time ago. Lena was quiet for a second. Then she walked over, her fingers wrapping around my wrist as she pulled me gently toward the dining table. "Sit," she said. "Dinner's done. You need real food and zero chaos." I managed a small smile and let her lead me. We sat. She poured the wine, pushed my plate toward me, and for the first time in days, I realized I was hungry, not just for food, but for normal, for peace. "So," she said with a spark in her eyes, "you called the cops on your ex-wife. That's bold." I chuckled under my breath, shaking my head. Not my proudest sentence. But Lena laughed hard. She threw her head back, the sound filling the room in a way no siren or scream ever could. "Well," she said between laughs, "that's one way to build a marriage. Outlast the ghost of the last one." I looked at her, something easing in my chest for the first time in what felt like weeks. "You stuck through all of it." She tilted her head, mock serious. "Oh, I considered running." "Oh yeah." She grinned. "But then I thought, if I leave, I'll never find out how this wild saga ends. And I hate unfinished stories." We both laughed then, really laughed. No tension, no shadow in the corner. Just the kind of easy release that only comes after surviving something that tried to pull you under. The plates emptied slowly. The wine glasses warmed in our hands. And when the music shifted into something softer, Lena reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "It's over now," she said. "Yeah," I nodded. "It finally is." We sat like that for a while, fingers intertwined over breadcrumbs and candlelight. The city outside was still glowing, wet sidewalks catching street lamp halos, traffic quieting to a lull. It wasn't just peace. It was earned. The bar was dim, tucked between two towering office buildings like a secret only regulars knew about. Soft rock played from overhead, the kind that didn't demand attention, just enough to fill the gaps between conversations. I found Marcus exactly where I expected him, booth near the back, glass already sweating from his first whiskey. He looked up and smirked. There he is, the married man, the myth, the mystery. I slid into the seat across from him. "Tried to call you last week." "Yeah, I saw," he said, sipping. "But figured if you were reaching out after 3 months of radio silence, either something was wrong, or you were finally done pretending everything was fine." I chuckled. "You're not far off." He raised an eyebrow. "All right, give it to me straight. Where the hell have you been?" I let out a breath. "You really want the full story?" He leaned back, nodding. "Man, it's been months since I had anything better than my neighbor's kid breaking a lawn gnome." So I told him. Everything. From the night I walked in and found Vanessa on my couch, to the summons, the courtroom, the wine-soaked dinner, the restraining order, and the final knock on my door. I didn't embellish, didn't dramatize it. I just laid it out, raw, plain, like pulling out splinters one by one. By the time I finished, Marcus sat back, his drink halfway to his lips, eyebrows raised so high they nearly met his hairline. "Damn," he muttered. "That's not just drama, man. That's HBO drama." I laughed. "Yeah, well, I lived it." He shook his head, then lifted his glass in a small toast. to surviving your own personal series finale. We clinked glasses. He took a sip, then leaned forward. But real talk? You handled that better than I would have. I don't know about that, I said. I almost lost it more than once. Sure, he nodded. But you didn't. And you still wrote her a check. You didn't humiliate her in court. You gave her every off-ramp. She chose the crash. I was quiet for a moment, turning the ice in my glass. I wasn't trying to be noble, I said. I just didn't want to be like her. Cold. Reckless. I wanted to make decisions I could live with. Marcus studied me. You know what I've always liked about you? You don't wear armor. You don't try to be the toughest guy in the room. But you've got steel under all that calm. I smirked. Is that a compliment? It is, he said, pointing his glass at me. Some people think kindness is weakness, that doing the decent thing makes you soft. But it doesn't. I looked down at my hands, same ones that had once held Vanessa's without knowing what she was capable of. Same hands that wrote her a check. That dialed the police. That built a new life brick by brick. Strength doesn't always have to shout, I said quietly. He grinned. Now you sound like someone who finally got some sleep. I laughed. Lena says I breathe like a man who stopped bracing for impact. She's right. We sat in silence for a few seconds, sipping our drinks. The warmth in my chest wasn't just from the whiskey. It was from knowing the storm was behind me. Not because I fought harder, but because I finally stopped letting the past drag me under. I looked around the bar, people laughing, music playing, nothing extraordinary. And I realized, that kind of ordinary? It's the rarest piece there is. That was the end of my story. Lena once told me, be better than her. And she meant it. Not just as a challenge to me, but as a reminder to herself. She chose empathy over pride when she saw my ex-wife on our doorstep, trembling and broken. I've wondered ever since, did she do the right thing? Or was kindness just another invitation to chaos? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if this story hits something real for you, don't forget to like and subscribe.
Competitive person, but I'm pretty easy on myself.
Wow, that's incredible.
I was always like really calm, really easygoing.
That's a real achievement.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you see people judging themselves all the time.
Yeah.
I was grabbing some coffees for my team a couple of months back or something. And I remember like I was paying the cashier and she gave me the change and I was grabbing the change and walking off and she was like, wait, I'm so stupid. I got the change wrong. And I was like, I didn't even notice. And I looked and I was like, oh, okay. Like, I was like, you're not stupid, like easy mistake. And you could see the look on her face. Like she was judging herself so harshly for something so small. And I guess when you see people judge themselves, then how do you respond to that? Or how do you support them?
Honestly, I really haven't experienced that much.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And I love hearing that because I think it is so true that you can curate